In honor of the Browns' embarrassing performance and Bailey Zappi being the 40th Brown to start a game at quarterback since 1999, the year of Tim Couch, we're going to go through all the names on here, or at least a good portion of the names, and I'm just going to talk about them. So starting off, Jeff Driscoll, he's hanging around. I think he's on Washington's practice squad. I actually liked him. He was drafted out of Louisiana Tech by the Niners. Didn't even make the Niners roster, I think. I think he caught on, though, in his rookie season with the Bengals. He was there. He was with the Lions. He was with the Texans, a special teamer. He tried a position switch to tight end. He did give off Taysom Hill vibes. Obviously, that's a pretty easy comparison for a quarterback who's trying to make a name for himself out of playing the quarterback position, but he's actually not bad. He's turned out a decade-long career, above average for sure. Joe Flacco, Hall of Famer in my eyes. We know that. PJ Walker, not very good. I don't even know what happened to PJ Walker. I don't know who he's on. DTR, one of the worst quarterbacks I have ever seen throw a pass. I thought he was going to be so good coming out of UCLA. I didn't really see the vision with him in Cleveland because of Deshaun Watson. Doesn't look like he's going to be that long-term backup slash potential trade bait that Cleveland had intended. Jacoby Brissett, one of the best backups that we have seen. Nick Mullins. I kind of forgot he was a Brown, but that's interesting. Nick Mullins, I still remember his Thursday night game, and it was just so good. He's the undrafted kid out of Southern Miss. It was being compared to Brett Favre. It was that year where Jimmy G was hurt, I think. So they were just playing a bunch of different guys. I thought that he had a future. I was wrong. He's turned into a pretty solid backup. Nothing too much more to say. Case Keenum still kicking it. One of the best college quarterbacks of all time, or at least one of the most efficient quarterbacks. He's had 3 different stints with the Texans. One of the few players to actually have a long career, but have like 3 different substantial stints with one team. The other guy that comes to mind whenever I talk about that is Carlos Dansby, who did it with the Cardinals. He started off there. I think he ended up in Miami, went back, then went to Cleveland, funny enough. Played there with like Christian Kirksey and Greg Robertson. But found his way back to Arizona eventually. Baker Mayfield, the best thing to happen to the Browns ever. I don't know, and they just threw him away. Getting him and Myles Garrett back to back was pretty good. And then Baker Mayfield's draft class alone, you get him at 1. There was actually a chance that Saquon would end up being the number 1 overall pick. Eli loved that idea, being a Penn Stater and a Browns fan. But you end up getting Denzel Ward, which surprised people at the time, over Bradley Chubb. Bradley Chubb turned out to be all right, but definitely made the right choice there. Denzel Ward has been better than Bradley Chubb. And then in the second round, so remember when I said that they were rumored to get Saquon? Oh yeah, then you get Nick Chubb. Kevin Hogan, another great athlete, Stanford man. Jake Delhomme, one of the better Panthers quarterbacks of all time. Not saying that means much because they've only been around since, 1996. But Jake Delhomme did take them to a Super Bowl. He benefited from having one of, if not the best wide receiver duo at the time in Muhsin Muhammad and Steve Smith. Seneca Wallace, I think he played for the Browns in like 2011, 2012. Another guy, decent athlete. I think Cleveland was actually one of his last stops. I think he finished up in Green Bay as Rodgers' backup. Brandon Weeden. Brandon Weeden was the quarterback for the Browns like when I was starting to really get into football, like that 2012 year, that 2012 quarterback draft class. One of the best of all time. Brandon Weeden did not contribute anything to that group. He would end up playing for both the Texans and the Cowboys, headed back to Texas. Thaddeus Lewis, he's another guy. I think he went to Duke, but he started like a Week 17 game back when there was only 17 weeks. And he actually did all right. Also played in Buffalo. Jason Campbell, a member of, going back to the Aaron Rodgers draft class, that 2005. Who else was there? 2005. That was the Matt Line? No, 2006 was Matt Leinart, Vince Young. So it was 2005. It was Alex Smith, Aaron Rodgers, Jason Campbell. I feel like there was another guy high up there. Brian Hoyer and Johnny Manziel. those were the days, that 2014 QB competition. Connor Shaw, the third quarterback on that roster, South Carolina quarterback. I think he was a late round draft pick. I think he was drafted in that 2014 draft. He didn't go undrafted. Didn't really get too much of an opportunity, but I like Connor Shaw. Josh McCown, another guy, one of the best backups of all time. Do you guys remember when the Texans were going to try and just transition him from being their emergency COVID quarterback right into being their head coach? But then, because of Rooney Rule and just logistics, that didn't work out. But Josh McCown, I think there's a bright future. He's currently in Minnesota helping with the Sam Darnold rejuvenation. Davis, that's Austin Davis. I saw Austin Davis play live, actually, the Browns-Steelers game. He played for the Rams. He was another guy in that 2012 draft class. He did go undrafted, though, but played for the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Browns. I think he's coaching now. RG3, he's known for eating some large croissants. Cody Kessler, I loved Cody Kessler. One of those USC guys, him and Matt Barkley, I was a big fan of them for no reason. I think it was just because I knew as a young fan USC was supposed to be good, but they weren't. But I knew that those two guys kind of looked the part of being from a quarterback-rich school. So I just kind of latched onto him. Matt Barkley, I think he was a fifth-round pick. He dropped. Kessler was a third-rounder. He ended up in Jacksonville and then disappeared. DeShone Kizer, very talented quarterback. Brian Kelly was his coach at Notre Dame. And Brian Kelly, almost immediately after Kizer declared, said, he really, really should have come back. He's too raw. He was in that quarterback draft class that was already loaded. Mitch Trubisky, and I get it. I don't like Mitch Trubisky as a Steelers fan, but he did have a couple of okay seasons in Chicago. Patrick Mahomes, obviously. Deshaun Watson, who at one point there was an argument was just as good as Mahomes. Obviously, those days have ended. And then DeShone Kizer was that fourth guy. Ended up being drafted in the second round. He's a part of that 0-16 Cleveland team. Colt McCoy, Texas legend. I didn't realize until I was later in life, just because I was young. I was, 8 when he was at Texas, how good he was at the University of Texas. But I was like Colt McCoy. He actually turned out a pretty nice career, worked under Jim Harbaugh. That kind of got him back on the right track. Then was in Washington for a while. And then New York and Arizona. I don't think I missed any stops there. Bruce Gradkowski, I know he's a Yinzer. He backed up Roethlisberger for a little bit. Also was a Raider. Trying to see Derek Anderson's there. I think that's Ken Dorsey. And yes, the Ken Dorsey, the offensive coordinator. I think he's in Cleveland. Yeah. Because Alex Van Pelt went to New England. Ken Dorsey fired midseason for Joe Brady last year. Derek Anderson, Pro Bowler for the Browns. He was probably the Browns' best quarterback before Baker Mayfield came to town. They let him go. He goes to the Cardinals and then ends up being one of the better backups of all time. I think that's Charlie Fry. I'm trying to look. Trent Dilfer, Super Bowl winner. Other McCown. Yes, both McCown brothers played. Luke McCown is the other one. Luke McCown, the younger brother. He was a part of an 04 draft class that featured Roethlisberger, Rivers, Manning. J.P. Lossman was the other first rounder. But then you had Matt Schaub, who I think was in the third or fourth round to Atlanta. Jeff Garcia, Kelly Holcomb, Doug Peterson. I'm assuming that's Ty Detmer. I think Ty Detmer's little brother also was in the league. But I'm pretty sure that was Ty. And then Wynn, I'm actually not familiar with. And then Doug Peterson. So, yeah, if this is everybody, or close to it, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're missing a couple. But if Wynn's the only guy who I have no clue who he is, that's pretty good. So, shout out to the Browns. 40 and counting, because something tells me we're at least going up to 41 in 2025.